Are you tired of the 9-to-5 lifestyle? Do you want more freedom to do what you want, when you want it, without sacrificing your current income? Then this is the show for you. Every week, we dive into John's journey towards financial freedom and everything he has learned since 2014. Real estate investing, cryptocurrency, stocks, private lending, foreign residency, tax saving strategies, infinite banking, assets protection, and much more. Now, here is your host, the founder of the Wealth and Freedom Nexus, John Rickgarn.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're listening to this. I'm John Rickgarn, the host of the Wealth and Freedom Nexus podcast, and I'm very excited to actually have the first interview of a turnkey real estate provider on the podcast here. Today, we have Dani and Flip, who are going to be telling us about their company, Freedom Real Estate. Freedom is headquartered in the great state of Ohio, and they are currently managing, as of 5 minutes ago that Dani told me, 510 properties. Depending on when you listen to this, it will probably be higher than that. But as of this particular point in time, we are over 500. So that alone is quite an accomplishment. Dani and Flip, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, you bet. Maybe you could just kind of give us a background. You have a really interesting story of how you met and got started on this. And maybe you can just kind of give us the highlights of that and how long you've run Freedom Real Estate now.
Okay, so way back in '07. Well, both Dani and I worked at Disney, and we both worked. Actually, you can see the Disney characters behind us.
Cool, yeah.
And we both love Disney, and we both worked on cruise ships. But the thing was I was always one step behind her. So she worked at Disney, and then she went on cruise ships. I worked at Disney, and then I went on cruise ships. And in fact, my very first cruise ship, when I was walking on the ship, she was actually walking off the ship at the same time. It's no joke. And it was a couple years later, like, I kept hearing about her, and I didn't, I never met her, and I kept hearing about her. She had no idea who I was. And it was a hurricane that went into the Caribbean. And so all the cruise ships left that were their normal routes and went to Nassau. Okay. And so we all happened to be in Nassau, and somebody told me, hey, that's her. And so I went running after her with my tuxedo yelling at her. And she's like, who is this crazy guy? And so that's how we actually met. She had no idea who I was, and I've been stalking her for about 2 years at that point. And so then we actually started working on cruise ships together on the Carnival Destiny. Go figure. So we did cruise ships till about 2004, and then that was when we got off of cruise ships. And we still did what we were doing at the time until 2008. And then in 2008, we're like, everything was starting to fall apart. And we're like, let's go into real estate, because that's a great time to go into real estate.
Yeah. There's nothing going on then.
Yeah, exactly. So we both got our realtor's license, because that's what you do, right?
Yep.
And we were realtors, we were official. And in the first 8 months, I think we got one deal. We did one transaction. And so we're like, okay, we need to fix this. And so she reached out to some real estate investor coaches or investing coaches, and one actually was in our backyard in Austin, Texas, and he was teaching 12 different strategies on making money in real estate. And so we're like, we're in. And so we went to him, and he taught us the 12 strategies, and we did what most people don't do, is we took action, and we started doing exactly what he was telling us. And then it spitballed from there. It was just, we were doing sub 2 wraps in Texas. We started out with short sales, but we went into sub 2s and then sub 2 wraps, and it was just going right along. And but we were in Texas because that's where my family's at. Okay. And then there was a medical issue, and so we wanted to move closer to Dani's family in Phoenix. So we moved to Phoenix. Well, in Phoenix, the strategies aren't the same as far as what you can or what's best to do. And so we were the real estate chameleon, and we switched to wholesaling because you couldn't throw a rock without hitting a wholesale deal in Phoenix. Oh, wow. Still to this day, by the way. So we did wholesaling in Phoenix. And while we were in Phoenix, we actually lived just north of Phoenix. And we met somebody here living in Ohio, and he's like, hey, we could do some deals together. And so next thing I know, I'm walking around in my AstroTurf backyard in Phoenix and talking to somebody in, I think it was New Hampshire, about a property in Ohio that neither one of us had been to, and I sold him this property.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. And then I realized, and so it was called turnkey real estate. We're like, wow, we've never heard of this strategy. And we instantly loved it. I know I did, because it is a way for us to deal with real estate investors on more than just one time. Because when you're doing a lot of real estate investing, you deal with somebody once and you never see them again. Right. And one of the things we did was a lot of sales previous, and we loved having repeat clients. Because then we knew exactly what they wanted, and we could take care of them, and we built that rapport, and you built that client base up, and we love that. And you didn't have that real estate investing until we started doing turnkey real estate. We're like, wow, this is awesome. Let's keep doing this. And so it kept getting better and better. And next thing you know, we literally loaded up the truck and moved from Phoenix to Southwest Ohio. And we actually moved to just outside of Dayton, Ohio, sight unseen. And we're like, we're all in. And we've been doing turnkey ever since. We've absolutely loved it.
Cool. All right. And now, Flip, you had mentioned outside of Dayton, where all does Freedom, have investment properties, or where do you, where's your portfolio at? Is it all in Ohio? And if so, what all major towns do you currently operate in?
Well, the southwest corner of Ohio, you've got an intersection of I-75 and I-70.
Okay.
And so we're basically right across I-70 and south.
Okay.
We do all of Dayton and around Dayton, all of the stuff in between Dayton and Cincinnati, which is Middletown, Franklin, Miamisburg, and then we are now down into Cincinnati, and we haven't gone into Columbus yet, but that's one of our next.
That's our next step.
One of our next steps. Yeah.
One of many.
One of many, exactly.
And I'm trying to remember from my geography lessons and Mr. Johnson's class, Columbus is the state capital. Is that correct? Or
you got it.
Okay. All right. Mr. Johnson, if you're listening to this, yes, I was paying attention every once in a while. So.
Nice.
All right.
Gold star.
Yeah. So one thing I was curious about for Freedom, are you primarily I know you mentioned obviously working with investors, but are these mainly single family homes? Are they existing inventory, build to rent, any duplexes, quads, or is it just kind of your bread and butter single family homes?
Yeah, so we started mainly off with single family homes.
Okay.
I would say 90% of what we were doing was single family. But as soon as we got our first duplex, it sold like that. We hadn't even rehabbed it yet. And there was a cash buyer saying, hey, I want to buy that. And I don't care that you haven't rehabbed it. I just want first place in line. I'll buy it now. You rehab it, you tenant it, and that's cool. So we were like, okay,
wow,
now, yes. So we started buying more, as much multifamily as we could come across. And they are harder to find than single family. So we do a lot of multifamily now. In fact, we are going into large multifamily at this point. We can go into that, at a different point in the podcast, but we're still heavy single family, but we buy up as much multifamily as we can.
Okay, sounds good. And just a tidbit to the listeners out there, since Dani did mention it, the nice thing about duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, as far as your standard Freddie and Fannie Mae loans are concerned, those are considered, quote, single family. So you actually can get what's known in the industry as a golden ticket, one of your 1 to 10 slots for a Freddie Fannie loan. You could get up to a fourplex on that one loan. I mean, you might be thinking, well, that's 4 units. That's not a single family. Well, as far as financing goes, that's how Freddie and Fannie look at it. Once you get to 5 units or above, then it's considered commercial. I won't get into that. I'll just leave that as a teaser for an upcoming podcast where I'll have a mortgage originator on as well. So make sure you hit the subscribe so you never miss an episode on that.
That's right.
Going back to the Ohio, and I was just kind of curious, as we're recording, we're getting to the end of 2021. I think we are maybe back to a new normal life, so to speak. But I was just wondering, how has, we've heard all these stories of, the COVID moratoriums, eviction moratoriums, you can't evict people. There's the hashtag cancel rent movement. And I firsthand know of a friend, he was, I think, over $9,000 behind with just a single renter. So I'm just kind of curious, with your portfolio managing over 500 properties, how have those two things impacted you, or have they impacted you in Ohio?
Yeah, they certainly have. I would say from the owner standpoint, because as we talked about right before we started recording this podcast, Flip and I, we run and own 6 real estate companies. So there's a different level as you hire so many team members that you stop doing certain jobs and you hire somebody for that seat, right? And you start getting out of it. So from the owner point of view, we weren't seeing a lot of effect on our KPIs and our income and things like that. So we didn't realize the impact it had, honestly. So I will say that, John, because you told me, hey, this is something that I think we could talk about. Mm-hmm. I sent a Voxer to our property manager and I said, all right, get me up to speed because I'm going to talk to John about this today. So I actually have some notes, and this is exactly what he said. And it did impact us a lot bigger than I thought. Okay. He said during COVID, we could not evict for non-payment of rent specifically. We could still do non-renewals, criminal lease violations, but the courts were allowed to interpret legislation as they saw fit. So there were certain pocket areas, Hamilton and Dayton. If you were in court for any kind of eviction, it had to be a very serious case of some kind, or an eviction would not be granted. Okay. He said the environment kind of became that landlords are bad people. They're greedy. All they want is money. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then late summer of 2020, we're all evil. Late summer of 2020, he said the legislation started to change and the resident had to prove that they were affected by COVID because people were taking advantage of the system. Right. So when he would go to court, he said the media wasn't doing a good job of letting residents know about this. So he would go to court and the tenant would say, I didn't know I had to provide anything. So then the judge would give them 2 weeks to go back and do whatever they needed. And they had to go back to court. And then the judge would make a decision at that point if they were able to prove that they had COVID. Then he said towards the end of spring, things started to break up as far as legislation, and decisions started going more towards the landlord's way for the obvious cases that you just mentioned. $9,000 behind on rent, one tenant. That's when landlords started winning because they're just like, okay, this person is taking advantage of it. And then he said for the biggest change in our property management company, he said they're having to paper trail things a little bit more because everything's gotten more serious in terms of going to the court and having these evictions. He said, so now if the tenant can't pay, this is what we always did. We always, what's going on? How can we help? Is there something that we can do? Always try to help them. In that now what's changed is they have to create the paper trail. I offered you this. I did this. They have to sign off on it. So when they go to court, in order to win, they have to prove, hey, we've done all of these things in order to try and help this situation, and it just has not worked out. And they're having more success being able to have a first-time eviction at that point in time in court. And then he said the other thing that's changed is timelines. Prior, we used to be a pretty tight 45-day timeline for any eviction that we needed. And now we're at 60 to 75 to 80 days, almost double. Okay.
Which, I mean, if you're a resident of California, 60 to 80 days probably sounds pretty good. I've heard of some of 6 to 8 months as a professional tenant, and I could go all day of some firsthand stories I've heard from there. You mentioned with the obviously the rentals and taking a step back, how is the multifamily going, and is that also geared towards investors? Like if I'm a trust fund baby with $7 million just burning a hole in my pocket, can I buy a 70 unit property from Freedom, or how is that starting to queue up there?
Yeah, great question. So in your example, can they buy it from us? The answer is no. Can they invest with us? The answer is heck yes. And please do. All right. Because we're going after those, not only for Flip and I personally, but for our company, and to help our investors in ways. And this is something I was going to go in towards the end, just help our investors, invest in a different opportunity to help them diversify their portfolio, give them the tax benefits. And so we're going to be doing syndications. We actually did our first 56 unit apartment complex when we bought it. Our private lenders funded the entire thing. So it was a $1.3 million purchase, $800,000 rehab estimate. I think we ended up spending about $850,000. And we had 4 lenders, 1 per building, because we didn't want to pool money and violate any SEC rules. So 1 per building, and they funded the entire thing. And we were like, hey, this is something we should start doing more of.
And as far as the syndications and kind of like you mentioned, and for any listeners that are, maybe new to, this or what's a syndication, essentially it's very much what Dani just described. Instead of an investor coming up with, I think you said $1.3 million. I mean, I don't have that in a bank account. I don't know of anybody that has that in a bank account, but it's basically pooling of investor money. So, okay, I don't have 1.3 million, but I do have, 25, 50,000 in a retirement account. I can basically buy into this. And okay, I'm not getting 100% of the benefits, but I'm getting a percentage of the benefits based on how much money I put in. And like you said, it just opens up the doors for a lot of investors out there and diversify their portfolio. With that, Dani, are they now, as far as the syndication, is that a 506C, 506B, or another alphabet soup one that I haven't heard of yet? Or?
Right now we're doing 506Bs, and we're doing that because we have quite a large network. We're using about 8 million at any given time with our private lender database. So we're just extending our network with the people we have relationships with. So I will say, and you'll probably go into this, the B means you have to have a established relationship.
Right.
So I always tell people I can talk in general, but jump on the phone with me and let's establish that relationship. And now I can send you a deal.
Right. Yeah. The biggest difference, and like you mentioned, Dani, too, the 506B, essentially you can take what are called non-accredited investors. High level, you have to have a net worth of $1 million or more, excluding your primary home, and or a income of $200,000 a year, $300,000 if you're married. That's for accredited investors. Then you can invest in what's called the 506C. The biggest difference is if you're on Facebook, Instagram, the web, and you're seeing all these ads for invest in the syndication, more than likely that will be a 506C because they are advertising. Yes. The SEC says you can advertise, but you can only accept accredited investors. If you're accepting non-accredited investors, you can't advertise. And then you might ask, well, how in the world do you get the word out? Well, just like we talked about, through networking, through, this person knows this person. Hey, send me a text. I got this deal, I want to talk to you. Then it's more of a pre-established relationship versus, hey, I saw this ad or this mailer, something there. So that's just a very high level 506B versus 506C and accredited investors. I'm going to make a note. I'll probably do another video on that just to go into detail because I'm sure there's at least one listener that's scratching their head and not knowing what we're talking about. So
that's right.
Make a note. I will go into detail of that in a further video. So the last question I had for you, Dani and Flip, and whoever kind of wants to take this. So I was reading one website I've followed for numerous years is the Tax Foundation, which obviously covers everything from where are the sales taxes, where are the property taxes, are there new legislations, whether it's New York or California, so on and so forth. And I think we're all pretty familiar with 2020 had a big impact on a lot of people and kind of raised a big question of where are people moving to and where are people moving from? And obviously your states like, Florida and Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Arizona, a lot of those saw in-migration of people, and a number of those states I currently invest in as well. Some of the states, not a big surprise. You have the People's Republic of California that had a huge mass exodus, New York, Illinois, and a number of other states. But I was curious. So Ohio was listed as one of the top 10 states for outbound migration. So there was more people moving out than moving in. Unfortunately, I don't have on here, it says, if that was number 1 or number 10 or somewhere in between. But as far as if someone, came to you or came to Freedom, hey, I have some money, I want to invest, why should they look at Ohio? And, would that be a concern of, the more out migration versus the population booms we see in Texas and Florida and some of the Sunbelt states?
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually, I was actually surprised that you had said that about being outbound, because we actually just saw, it was a month or two, which it could have been like 6 or 8 months ago because the time flies over here. But it was an article that was actually done by U-Haul. And they talked about where people are moving, and Ohio was like 3 or 4.
Oh, really?
As far as the top 10 states that people are moving. The main reason why, and it's funny because we had just lived in Texas for almost 10 years, and then we lived in Phoenix for 2 years, and then we moved to Ohio, and I'm like, holy smokes, it is so cheap here. Just the cost of living in general is so much cheaper here. I don't even want to give you examples compared to Arizona. It's not even.
I have a condo in Arizona. I understand.
It's not even in the same ballpark. But this is the what they call the Rust Belt, right? But this is Dayton and Middletown are the 2 of the bigger areas that we do a lot of deals in. We started doing more in Cincinnati, but Cincinnati is almost a different class than Dayton and Middletown. And Dayton and Middletown are your good old blue collar towns. Middletown is the main source of anything in Middletown was AK Steel, one of the largest steel plants in the world. And their father worked there, their grandfather worked there, their uncles worked there, their great grandfathers worked there. It's that they never left Middletown. It's that blue collar town. And but so many more people are starting to come to this area. In fact, they just announced they're the proposal is building this $1.3 billion entertainment complex in Middletown called Hollywoodland. But and actually, if you would have told us they were going to build that, where would they build it? We would have said, Cincinnati. But Middletown would have been the last place we would have thought. And so they're trying to bring more and more people to this area. But there's so many things that are going on in Dayton that people don't even know about. The Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is one of the largest research Air Force bases in the world. It employs hundreds of thousands of people, the Kettering Health Network is one of the largest health networks. Again, Kroger's world headquarters are here.
Amazon even came out here.
Amazon is building more and more. They not only have an airstrip, but they're building more and more warehouses here. And so it's just because it's not, the cost of living here is so cheap, and there's people there's so many jobs here, and so it's bringing in more and more renters, and it's funny because you talk about we're coming down in the market, right? Dayton does this. It doesn't go woo. There's no highs and lows. It's pretty. It might go up.
We call it boring.
Yeah, it's boring, but I like boring.
Sometimes that's good. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's and this is, like I said, when we lived in Texas and Arizona, we had no idea. We got here, we're like, oh my gosh, this is great. And if you would have been to Dayton 10, 15 years ago, you'd be like, I'm not going back there. It's a completely different city now. It's just the rejuvenation of the entire city and the waterfront area of Dayton, and even Middletown we've been here since 2015. And we've seen a major change even in Middletown. And so, and I think last I saw the percentage of owner to renter in the area, especially the areas that we're in, is about 50-50. Last I saw. And so now there's certain areas that we don't buy for our turnkey business because of that. They're more owners than renters. But there's such a large area of those rental class areas all throughout Dayton and Middletown, and now we're getting down into Cincinnati. So it's and the amount that you're going to get for your dollar here is way more than you're going to get anywhere else. We couldn't do these kind of deals in Texas or Arizona at all.
Sure. Okay. And I think you mentioned with the affordability, and I was just on your website, and I've been on your mailing list for a while. It isn't unheard of to see, single family properties come up for, $120,000 and get, $950, maybe a little over $1,000 rent, which gets you close to that 1% rent to value ratio, which, if you're in Texas or Arizona, good luck finding that. But I think that's the other, that's the other appeal I like about Dayton is, hitting those numbers. And you might not see 10, 20, 30% appreciation, but if you're, in this for cash flow, like I am, and I hope a lot of our listeners are, that's what you want. You want kind of the even Stevens or the boring markets, like you said, Flip. As far as going forward, do you see, much changes as far as the affordability for the homes, as an investor, or any changes in the rents, or are you still kind of seeing this pretty consistent like you've seen for the last several years?
Well, the last I saw is the rents here are still going up. They're going up almost at an equivalent of the values of the properties.
Okay.
And it's funny you said the 100 to 120 for a single family house. That house that I sold when I was walking around in the backyard, that was a $54,000 house.
Oh, geez.
It was a three bedroom, one bath that rented for $750. And so that's when I went, we've got to move there.
And I think I got to find it. I think there was an article. There was a place in California. The house actually caught on fire and the roof caved in. They sold it as is. And I want to say it sold for like $600,000,
wow.
For a, great open sunroof. I don't know how they marketed that, but just here, $54,000. I think that is just stunning. So
that'd be an open floor plan. That's
yeah, exactly. Very, very open floor plan. So, well, this has been great. And I really appreciate you guys coming on. Do you have any last words for our listeners? And if anyone was interested in learning more about freedom and possibly investing, how would they reach out to you?
Absolutely. So first of all, you can go to freedomrealestategroup.com and you're going to see on there, I think under the About section, you're going to see even our family of companies. We've got a renovation company, we have a property management company, a brokerage acquisition company, and now a syndication company. So we have vertically integrated ourselves in a way to just serve other people better, because some people want to have, buy a house that's, not rehabbed yet, but has cash flow coming in already. We have those. Some people want to do the BRRRR. We sell those. Some people want a fully done turnkey that's just it's ready, it's rehabbed, everything. And some people, like we've talked about today, want to get into multifamily and large multifamily. So we've really done our best to listen to people and then go, hey, we want to do that too. So let's do it for us, build it for them, and we'll just all do it together. So I think that's probably to sum it up. And then if you want to email us, you can email me at Dani, DANI, at freedomrealestategroup.com. And depending on the question, again, I don't know everything anymore because we've got like 40 plus team members, but if I don't know the question, my assistants are in my email and they'll forward it to the right person, but that's just one easy contact piece so you can get a reply right away.
Perfect. And if you're listening to this on the road or working out, don't fret. I will be typing all this out in the show notes, so you don't need to scramble for a, piece of pen and paper or have to listen to it again. Well, again, Dani and Flip, I greatly appreciate it. And thank you for coming on the show, and actually hoping to visit the Dayton area next summer in 2022. So I'm anxious to see what all the new changes and refurbishments of the area looks like.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having us. And if you're in town, you better come see us.
That's right.
I will do that. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to share, rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. For more updates, check out www.wealthandfreedomnexus.com. Remember, nothing on this show should be considered tax, legal, investment, or professional advice. This show is produced solely for educational and informational purposes. Please consult an appropriate and licensed tax, legal, real estate, or business professional for specific advice for your situation. For distribution or publication rights or media interviews, please contact the host.